COVID-19 pandemic and issues that might affect many of us in the post-COVID world as restrictions are gradually lifted. Tonight, our speakers are from the Greater Manchester Police Economic Crime Unit, and they will be giving advice on how we can protect ourselves from fraud and scams. I'm sure that we all know somebody who's been affected by online scams, if not yourself. Now, during the presentation, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat and our presenters will try their best to answer your questions. Our moderator this evening is Stella, and she'll be taking your questions and comments during this evening's presentations. So I hope you find tonight's session informative, and I'll hand over now to Stella to continue the proceedings for tonight.
Thank you, Leroy. Good evening. I'd like to thank you all and for joining us today, and would also like to welcome the Greater Manchester Police Economic Crime Unit to tonight's session. With us today we have Les Olmec and Pete McAvoy from GMP Scum Busters. As well as that, we have DC Craig Moylan from Economic Recovery Unit Training Academy. As Leroy mentioned, please feel free to present your question via our chat function. Thank you. And now I'd like to pass you over to GMP, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, my name's, hang on, we're just gonna sort our mutes out here. Pete, can you turn your computer down? Okay, sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. My name's Craig Moylan. I'm one of the detectives in the Economic Crime Unit over here at Nexus House in Ashton, part of the Serious Crime Division. Yes, fraud is part of the Serious Crime Division, and so it should be, as we will hopefully sort of show you this evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll explain exactly why it's so important for us to get our message out to as many people as possible. So hopefully there's plenty of you out there who will benefit from tonight, from some of the information that we're going to give you. I'm accompanied, as your colleagues said, by Pete and Les, who are volunteers who assist our team. And again, I'll explain exactly how vital they are to the police sort of reaction to fraud. There's so much that we could talk about, but I know we're quite constrained by time. So we are going to get into some examples of fraud and how frauds happen. We're going to have plenty of time for questions and answers. Hopefully we can help people out if they need it. But there's so much information that we can give you if there are no questions or if people are shy or anything like that. Now, as an introduction, ultimately, as they always say, if you've got a good point, then to illustrate it, you really could do with a story. And so what I want to talk to you about is an example of a fraud that happened not so long ago involving a chap in the Greater Manchester area. And I could sit here and give you stat upon stat about fraud and dangers and the peril. And you'd think, yeah, wow, that is quite interesting. But I think this is more memorable if I give you an example of a story or an actual incident that took place. So if you bear with me, a little while ago, there was a chap, we're going to call him Harold. It's not his real name, but I think we'll call him Harold, all right? And Harold was in his mid to late 70s and he lived in the Manchester area. He always had. He was obviously retired and he spent all his time looking after his wife who had ever sort of worsening dementia. And that was a real full-time job for Harold. And he was ex-military, so he was all about loyalty and patriotism and kind of doing the right thing type of guy. And as I said a little while ago, he got a phone call from home from somebody saying they're from the NCA. Now, for those who don't know, the NCA is the National Crime Agency, which is kind of like the UK version of the FBI. Obviously not as famous, and they said they could do with his help. Now, the NCA, they look into serious and organised criminals, and they started to talk to Harold and tell him about what they were doing, and they quickly worked out that Harold really, really could be of benefit to them. And they explained to him how there was a number of people who'd sort of infiltrated into the local banking system, and OCG, an organised crime group, had sort of corrupted some bank officials, and they were using those officials to launder their criminal proceeds through the local banks. And they were using a variety of techniques. Now, the NCA said they were onto who they thought it might be, but they needed customers' help to sort of gather evidence. And they found out that Harold was a member of the local Halifax branch, and they talked him into helping them out. Now, that started by them asking Harold if he had certain amounts of money in his account, which he said, yeah, he was doing okay for money. Because otherwise they said, we will put money into your account, but it kind of alerts the staff that there might be something odd going on. Anyway, Harold agreed to do it, and his brief was to go to the local branch and withdraw as much money as he could and bring it back to his house. So Harold did that. He withdrew the money and brought it back to the house, where an NCA operative came and met him and looked at the money and quickly determined that it was counterfeit money. And they said, we're going to have to seize that money off you, Harold. And they got him to sign an exhibit label, and they also got him to sign a document stating it was the official part of the Official Secrets Act, and that Harold couldn't tell anyone about this. So Harold did as they asked, and he felt quite important that he was helping them catch these criminals. But obviously that money was now gone. That happened a couple more times with the same sort of results of them seizing the money. And then these people asked him to actually apply for a loan, saying there's a lot of corrupt loan agreements being carried out. And so they got him to apply for a loan, a significant loan online. And again, he had that loan authorized. And once he'd got the money, he was then tasked to divert that to other accounts, also to go in and withdraw some, go into other branches and deposit into those other accounts. So again, that was another lot of money that Harold thought he was helping out with and providing evidence to this team. And finally, they then also asked him to set up online banking and move any more money that he might have to other accounts that they would mention to him. Now, these accounts were red flagged, and they said, your bank shouldn't allow them to go through. But if they do allow them to go through, it means the bank, we know who's allowing this to happen, and it's all vital evidence. So once again, Harold was only too happy to help. If Harold was guilty of anything, it was being too nice and too trustworthy. And it was only when he kept saying, well, when do I get my money back? Obviously, when are you going to sort of credit my account back? And they went, yeah, as soon as we can. And then, of course, Harold sort of said, well, I'm running out of money. And he quickly had, and he was of no use to these people anymore. So they dropped contact. He couldn't get hold of them. And a couple of weeks went by. He still thought he was under the constraints of the Official Secrets Act. And in the end, he broke down to one of his neighbours because he didn't have enough money to pay his bills and to get the food they needed for him and his wife. His neighbour listened to the story and said, I think we better get the police involved. Officers attended and worked out what had gone on, and poor Harold was distraught. He hadn't told his wife, and he said if he wasn't her only carer, that he would have killed himself. Now, Harold had lost his life savings. He'd raised a loan of £20,000, which he now had to pay back, and he'd also cashed in his pension, his private pension. £87,000 Harold was down. And that is a serious crime. That is fraud, ladies and gentlemen. And that is a horrible story. Now, I will tell you a bit more about that story a bit later. It's not as tragic ended as you would hope. But I just wanted to give you an example of how frauds can happen, and how people, just through being genuinely nice, can get sucked in by these criminals. Okay, sometimes people don't realize that fraud can be as serious as it is, but it can be incredibly life-changing. So that's my little example of a case study, which hopefully you will resonate with you all. And now we're going to go on what's happened, but it's just to remind you all, if any of you have been a victim of fraud, or you've been somebody who has, please don't judge them and don't feel bad if you have been tricked, because so many people have. I don't know if you can move the slide along there, Les, for me. I know it's not as fluid as we might like, but we're on different computers, and I don't know if it says my name's Ellie on the machine, but it's actually Craig. I'm borrowing Ellie's computer. So we're just going to share some screens here that hopefully you can see, and give you an example of what we're going to talk about. So anyone can be a victim of fraud, ladies and gentlemen, anybody. I've dealt with judges, I've dealt with barristers, I've dealt with surgeons, I've dealt with teachers, I've dealt with cops, and dealt with cops in the fraud unit who have been victims of fraud. It doesn't discriminate. You can come from any background, and you can be duped, you can be targeted, and you can be tricked. And so what I would always say to you, please never be embarrassed or ashamed, and keep it to yourself, because it will not do you any good. And we do want to help, all right? I think you can see on your screen there just how big the problem is. Now, GMP residents, we're around 3,000 GMP residents, or sort of Greater Manchester residents, 3,000 a month who are reporting fraud. And that's far too many for any police force to investigate. And as you can see on the screen there that Les has put up for us, it's, depending on which survey you read, either 1 in 5 or 1 in 20 frauds are actually reported. So there's so many people out there who are victim of fraud who never say anything, primarily because they think, oh, well, I was stupid, I was an idiot, I'm embarrassed. But please, we always want to hear about these frauds, because that's the way to shut them down. Even if we can't actually always catch the criminal, we want to be able to shut those people down. So talking about facts and figures, we're not going to go into loads of it because I haven't got loads of time, but the scale is enormous. Suffice to say, you are twice as likely to be a victim of fraud than any other crime. Yes, that's twice as likely than any other crime. All right, so it is vital, and hopefully that's why you guys have invited us tonight, and we can, like I say, offer some information which will be invaluable to you all. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is how do we protect ourselves from, again, becoming a victim of these criminals. And Les is going to talk to us a little bit about how fraud starts. Now, social engineering is primarily how they start, and social engineering is just basically people befriending you and tricking you and getting your confidence and then taking advantage of you. And what we really want to do is always shut down the initial starting point for the fraudsters. It used to be in the old days that somebody would come knocking at your door. They might be a local con man or con woman. But now, with the advent of the internet, with the advent of smartphones, the whole world is the marketplace for these fraudsters. We can be targeted by offenders in Australia, in Africa, and vice versa. British fraudsters can target anyone in America, in Russia, anyone they like. So the whole world is the marketplace for fraud, and that's why it's so huge. So I think that's enough for me for now, and I'm going to get my esteemed colleague just to introduce you. Obviously, I've advised you that I'm a detective. Because of the figures, GMP can't cope with investigating all of these. So what we've done is we've tried to recruit as many sort of willing volunteers, capable volunteers, and Les and Peter have been helping us out now for a little while. They come under the term Scam Busters, and they do an invaluable job in offering advice and delivering messages like we are doing tonight. So they're a vital part of our team. And I think Les is going to talk to you now about one way how fraudsters will target you. So I will speak to you soon.
Okay. You can mute. Right. Good evening, everyone. And can you just turn your speaker down? Hope you can hear me now. My name's Les Allmark, and as Greg said, I'm one of the team of Scam Busters. There's about 14 of us as police support volunteers. There are a number of voluntary roles within Greater Manchester Police, but we're working with the Economic Crime Unit And basically our job is to support people who have been scammed. It's to try and help them, get through the experience, to try and stop them continuing being scammed, because very often scammers will come back at you, or they'll sell your details on to somebody else and other people will scam you. So it's to try and stop that ongoing scamming, but it's also to give advice and information about how scams work and how, what we can do to stop it. So we don't have any investigative role, we don't have any police role, we're support volunteers, but we are here to help in the role. But we're just going to talk to you about specific kinds of scams now, and hopefully, just bear with me one minute. Right, yeah, I'm going to talk to you first about telephone scams. Now, if we were in a room together in one of your churches, I would ask you at this point, how many people in the room have at least one telephone? And I would guess that probably all of you would put your hands up. I would then ask for a follow-up question. How many of you have had scam calls on that telephone? How many people have had calls from Microsoft technical department, or from BT, or your telephone or landline provider, or your internet provider? How many people have had calls from HM Revenue and Customs, what used to be the Inland Revenue? The other one that we get regularly is Amazon or television licensing. These calls are everywhere. And I would guess that most of you, if not all of you that own a telephone, have at some point have had a call like this. Microsoft technical department, there's a problem with your computer. You need to download this software. We can help you, da-di-da-di-da. Or your landline is going off, or we're going to cancel your internet, or there's been some activity on your Amazon account that you don't know anything about. And they can be quite worrying. When you first get them, you think it's genuine. And why wouldn't you? It's just a perfectly normal call. But they are scam calls. They are trying to get information from you. They're trying to get into your account. And ultimately, the aim of every scammer is to take money from you. And these people are looking at ways of doing that. One thing I would say, if you get calls like this, please, please, please do not ever download any software from the scammers. There's a set of software called Team Viewer, Microsoft Team Viewer, which they will try and get you to download. If you download that, that gives them access to your computer as if they were sat over your shoulder or sat on a chair next to you, like Craig and Peter are with me. It gives them full access to your computer. They can see everything that you've done on it there. They can see all your passwords. They can see all your bank accounts, bank statements, and all the rest of it. So please don't ever download any software that a scammer offers you. The best thing about telephone scams is that as soon as you realize that it's a scam, it puts you in charge. You take power away from the scammer, because as soon as you realize it's a scam, you've got the opportunity to just hang up, just put the phone down. If they tell you that they're from HM Revenue and Customs and that there's been a warrant out for your arrest and police officers are going to come round to your house, hang up. Nobody's going to come after you. Nobody's going to come chasing you. There's no police officer going to come around with a warrant. Nobody can take anything away from you. So as soon as you realize or suspect even that this is a scam call, the easiest way of dealing with it without any shadow of doubt is just put the phone down. Put the phone down, put the kettle on. What we would say to you as well is just wait. Wait about 5 minutes before using that phone again, because scammers can actually hold the line open. I'm not sure of the technicalities, but I understand that an incoming call is the caller that has to terminate the call. So if they keep their line open, you can pick your phone up and think that you're dialing out to somebody, and very often they will use this against you. You think you're dialing out to your bank or whoever it is that's made the call, and you're actually speaking to the scammer again. So if you feel that this is happening, put the phone down, wait at least 5 minutes before using that phone again. If you think it's your bank, or if you think it really is HM Revenue and Customs or TV licensing or whoever it is, then go on to the official website and just see if there is a problem, or if you can contact them and just ask them, have you been in touch? Watch the numbers that the scammers will use against you, because there is a thing called number mirroring, where they can actually copy the number of your bank So it looks as if it's an incoming call from your bank. So that again is why we say you put the phone down. You're going to ring your bank, wait at least 5 minutes, or use a different phone. Once you realise that it is a scam call, you suspect it's a scam call, you're in charge then. It's up to you then what you do. You can just put the phone down, and that is by far the easiest way of doing it, and that is by far the best advice we can give you. But if you want to play, then I don't think we would stop you. I used to get a scam call nearly every Saturday morning about 11 o'clock from Microsoft. It was always a lady or a gentleman with an East Asian accent, but with an English name, trying to convince me that they're from Microsoft and there was a problem with my computer. And one Saturday morning, I just decided I'd had enough of this. I was going to try and string it out for as long as I could. So I said, oh yeah, which department of Microsoft are you from? She said, Microsoft Technical Department. That's fine, that's good. So whereabouts are you? She said, we're in Reading. Oh, I said, what's the weather like in Reading today? She said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? They said, well, we haven't got any windows in our office. So, well, what was it like when you came into the building? I don't know. This went on for about 20 minutes. And in the end, she called me an idiot and she slammed the phone down on me. So if you want to string them along, that's entirely your prerogative. Obviously, don't do anything illegal. Don't try and say that you're something that you're not. But if you want to string them along, that's up to you. But the best advice we can give you is to say that as soon as you realize it's a scam call, and I can guarantee you that BT will not ring you to say that your line's being cut. Your internet provider won't ring you to say that your line's being cut. HMRC won't ring you to say that they're coming to arrest you. And television licensing won't ring you to say there's a refund or there's a problem with your TV license. So as soon as you get a call like that, either put the phone down, or if you're feeling playful, string them along with it. The other thing that you can do is that you can put in a telephone blocker. Really easy to do. Your telephone provider almost certainly has a free one that you can use. I'm with BT, and we use BT Call Protect. It's very easy to set up. You just do it on the BT homepage on the website. Really easy to set up. As soon as you get a scam call, put the phone down, you dial 1572, and you can add that call to your junk mail list. You won't get any more calls from that number again, and any calls from them will just go to a voicemail box. Really easy to solve. So, quick advice, as soon as you realize it's a scam call, put the phone down, play along with them if you want to, that's up to you, but do install a call blocker because that will stop you getting the calls in the first place. That's all I'm going to say on phone scams. I'm going to pass you across now to Peter for a different kind of scam.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I suppose it's coming down. One of my jobs as a scam buster is to ring up victims of scams, and I probably contact roughly 25 to 30 people a month. And the job there is to first of all see if they're all right, and secondly to discuss the problem that they had and perhaps offer advice, and that is always very much appreciated, and it's something that I find very worthwhile. So I'm going to tell you about a scam that I came across recently, and I'm sure that most people will be aware of this, and it's the Royal Mail scam. Thanks for the slide, Les. Yeah. This victim received a text on his mobile, exactly like you're seeing in front of you now, and the victim himself was actually expecting a package, so it turns out wrongly he clicked on the link that you see there, and that took him to the Royal Mail website. Of course it wasn't the Royal Mail website, but it looked like it, and it asked him for his card number and the CV code on the back of the card and the expiry date of the card. Pretty standard stuff, you get that even if you're just ordering a takeaway, as I'm sure you're aware. There was another button next. He clicked on that. He found that a bit surprising, but nevertheless he clicked on it, and on there it asked for his bank account number, his sort code and his date of birth. Beginning to get a bit suspicious, but nevertheless he went for it, and that was the end of that. And then a minute or two later his wife said to him, "Are you sure you've done the right thing?" So he said, "Well, I think it's all right. But you're right. Where have Royal Mail got my mobile number from? Because they wouldn't have his mobile number, would they? So the victim rang his bank, NatWest, and NatWest said to him that it was a scam, and they cancelled the transaction, which did appear on his account, and cancelled the debit card and sent him another card, which he got at his address about 3 days later. End of problem. No, it wasn't. About 2 days later, after he'd received the card, so about a week after the original Royal Mail scam, he got a phone call from NatWest Fraud Department. NatWest Fraud Department informed him that they thought there was some suspicious activity on his account, and was he aware of a direct debit being set up for a dental practice locally. He said no, he wasn't aware of that. And Matthew, that's the NatWest fraud person, said to him, right, well, I need to suspend the account. So he said, right, okay, go ahead. But he said, I do need the PIN number for your online banking, and it begins with your date of birth. So the first 6 digits were the victim's date of birth, and then there were 4 other digits which made up the 10 numbers. At that point, the victim thought this is a scam, because the PIN number that was provided to him with online banking was provided by NatWest Bank in the first place. So why were NatWest Bank asking him for the final 4 digits? The victim put the phone down. He rang the fraud department after 5 minutes, and he spoke to somebody and said that they had no knowledge whatsoever of this conversation. His bank account had not been suspended, and he did the right thing by shutting the call down. That victim was me. So did I feel a bit foolish? Yes, of course I did. But I'm quite happy to share that foolishness with you, because it happens to everybody. So that's my story. Thank you.
Shall I go? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much there, Pete, and thanks very much for sharing, you know, a personal tale there. Pete works in this business, if you like, and he was targeted. He was expecting a parcel. I think it was a family birthday or something, and you know, this is how easy it is, and this is how easy it is for us all to get tricked and to sort of we are all a victim of perhaps being too trustworthy. So the message I would always send to you today is become that paranoid person, become that person who challenges everything, who double checks everything, and just basically ignore these cold calls and cold texts. Now, on your screen now, there's a phishing sort of screen. And again, this is exactly the same as what Les has just been talking about, and Pete. And it's just the way, instead of them ringing you and having a verbal communication, you're getting these emails, you're getting these texts. I know you've all had them. The emails often will come from the TV licensing office, allegedly, or the HMRC, the tax office, primarily because the vast majority of us have a TV. The vast majority of us do pay some sort of tax. So what better way to target everyone and get everyone responding to you by saying you owe us some tax, or you're due a refund, you've just got to fill in some details, click on the link, and there's always that little devil on your shoulder saying, what happens if I click the link? You know, does that immediately drain my bank account, or what's the worst that could happen? And there's all sorts that could happen. They could send down some sort of Trojan into your system, which causes you a problem, something called ransomware ultimately. There could be a keylogger entered onto your system where they can then notice what keys you're pressing. But a lot of the time it's just press one and you fill in your details, a little bit like Les talked about. You put your name, your address, your date of birth, and then they might ask you to set up a password for dealing with the HMRC in the future. And the problem is, obviously, a lot of people use the same password for everything. So if they get your password for the account you're just setting up, they'll kind of have ammunition to target you in the future. So this is why we're asking you, please ignore these messages, these refunds, or these bills that they're asking you to send. The more details you pass on, the more ammunition you're giving to the fraudster to target you in the future, to come back to you pretending to be from your bank. And they know your mother's maiden name. They know the last 2 letters of your mother's maiden name. So you begin to think it is the fraud department of the bank. So the less information you share, the more safe you keep yourself, if you like. The more you share, the more vulnerable you make yourself. So rather than labor the point and going into all the different types of scams and different approaches, ultimately, if you're getting an offer, a cold offer, maybe it's time to just pass up on that offer and just think, well, you know, there's a chance it is a fraud, so I might miss out on a free voucher for Asda, but I don't care. I'd rather that than have somebody accessing my bank accounts or getting all my personal details and then being able to set up a loan in my name, much like poor Harold did. So that's the message we wanted to get across. It is a little bit sort of fast forward, if you like. I mean, I do a lot of this training, and I know the guys do a lot of delivery as well. And, you know, we do it a whole morning, but your team, we're quite limited on time. So hopefully we've got the message across there about the perils of fraud, and specifically about how fraudsters approach us all with those phone calls and with those text messages and with those emails. So kindly just ignore them, delete them. You can actually forward them on. To, I think it's, let me just grab my notes here. Yeah, there's the suspicious email reporting service, which is an email address called report@phishing.gov.uk. You could forward it on to them. Or if it's a text message, if you just press forward and put in the number 7726, it forwards it on to the government organisation who try and shut these people down. If you can't remember those things, don't worry. Just ignore and press delete. All right. So it has all been us talking for the last 20, 30 minutes, and we have had a couple of questions that we've got some answers prepared for, most common questions. But I was thinking of just opening it up to the room. I think Stella is the moderator. If there's any questions that anyone wants us to go with straight away, we will do that. Or alternatively, I will talk to you about some very common questions that we get when we deliver this type of sort of message. So are there any questions that people want to share with us right now?
Thanks. Thank you, Craig. Stella here. I will put the questions forward if that's okay with you. I've got some already on the chat. Right. The first question I've got here is it okay to save the password on laptops or on the smartphone? Yeah. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. It is, of course, safe to store your passwords. Most of these smartphones have password managers on, and I have one on my own phone. The trick is ultimately to have try and keep your passwords different. It's so bloody hard to do, I know, because you can't remember them when you go into different things. But yeah, if you can use a password manager, there's usually an app on your phone that is safe to get into, and even on your computer. The trick is when somebody rings you or contacts you and says your internet, there's a problem with it, we need to get that remote access to it. That's when you can have a problem, because you'll download, I think Pete mentioned TeamViewer, or there's other random remote access tools they're called, and that gives somebody access to your information. So while they're talking to you, they're quickly looking in the background, browsing through your whole computer, looking at your browser history, and they might say, "Oh, right, I see that it's Royal Bank of Scotland online banking." So they now know you're probably very likely Royal Bank of Scotland customer. And also they might then look through your Word documents where you might have your passwords as well. So put it in a secure, encrypted sort of app, if you like, on your computer. Don't just have it on a Word document. That would be my advice to you. But of course, the safest way is always try and challenge those people who are ringing you saying there's a problem with your computer. We need to get access to it. No, ignore that.
unless you can see there's a problem with your computer, it's not working, it's super slow or anything like that, then don't trust somebody on the end of a line who you don't know who it is. If you've got a problem with your computer, go on to your local sort of IT provider and just say, I'm having problems with me computer, and you'll get a trusted person to come out to you. So again, it's all about be super paranoid and don't believe these cold calls. But yeah, and trying, I know it's common sense, isn't it, that I'm talking, but sometimes we do use the same usernames and the same passwords for a lot of different accounts, and that's kind of a no-no. Okay.
Thanks, Craig, for that. As well as that, somebody is asking.
I can't hear you.
Can you not hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I've got you, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, someone's saying scams are so sophisticated now. How do I know it's not my bank, both by call or email? I think you've answered this before when you did the presentation.
A little bit, but you know, we're happy to sort of repeat it. Ultimately, as Peter alluded to, and I think Les mentioned it as well, if you're getting a call from your bank, the actual number might come up on your display, which suggests it's from your bank. It's called spoofing, isn't it? And for some reason, people out there have made these facilities available. So I could download an app, so I could ring you pretending to be from the hospital, and it would be the legitimate hospital number or the bank number. And it's so annoying for us in law enforcement that why anyone would need this service anyway. But yes, do not trust a cold call. If somebody rings you up saying there's a problem with your bank account, say, okay, thanks very much. And then, like the lad said, drop the call, get hold of your bank card, for instance, and there's a number on the back of your card. I think, you know, if you've lost or stolen, give them a call and just say, look, I've had a call from your team, and I'm 99% will say you haven't had a call from our team. But it's all about being extra cautious, okay? And that would be my advice. They are very sophisticated, these scammers, and it is difficult not to believe them. But it's all about taking your time, asking for advice, seeking advice from friends and relatives, going on to the advice, just go on Google and said, received strange cold call. There's an organization called Action Fraud. We're going to give you some links to sort of advice sites. There's plenty of advice out there. So it is a case of ultimately don't believe anybody who you don't know. Okay. Hang on.
Okay.
Les is just going to top up on that.
Yeah, just to kind of add a little bit into that. Craig mentioned Google there. It's a really useful tool. If you get a call and you don't know who it's from, just put the number into Google and it'll come up. You can see all sorts of answers there. And one of the first ones will be who called me. And people will report scam calls into that. So you can see whether it's a genuine call. You don't need to do anything else other than just put the telephone number in that you've just been called from. And Google will show you whether it's a scam or not.
Thanks a lot, Craig and Les, for that. Someone is asking as well, they got an email supposedly from a friend, a friend's name, asking for them to click onto a link, and yet she didn't send the email. How is she able to tell, you know, from the red flags? How can she differentiate these emails? Is there any way?
Hang on. Yeah, you got me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it is, again, it's a common one where people will have their own email accounts compromised, hacked, if you like, and ultimately they will send the same message to every one of their contacts, okay? So ultimately, if you got a strange message from a friend or a relative, often asking you for money or something like that, you're just going to have to say, hang on, this is a very unusual request. Why wouldn't they text me? Why wouldn't they ring me? And please do not just respond to that, because there is a chance that your friend's email has been compromised, okay? And that message has been sent to everyone. So often people are in a network of friends. So 4 or 5 of your friends might have had the same email from Ellie, for instance, saying, I'm in trouble, I need some money, can you just help me out? You might want to speak to your friends first. Or me personally, I would use another method of communication that I had for that friend whether I then ring them or I text them, Facebook message, instant message, and just say, are you really in trouble? Of course, I'll help you out if you need to, but don't respond direct to that initial communication, because there's a fair good chance that it's somebody actually sort of impersonating your friend or your contact. Is that fair?
Yeah, thank you for that. As well as that, we're just wondering, what are the current or the latest scams, if that's what you want to call it, within Greater Manchester at the moment?
Okay, what time have we got? About 3 hours. Okay,
make it brief, please.
I can answer that. I mean, you can shout up as well, Les, if you want. But ultimately, there's loads and loads, if you like, Stella. A lot of them are old school. It's always HMRC. It's always TB licensing, because we all pay tax. We all have got bills there. Often we get in pet frauds. Lots of people have decided to buy a pet during the last 12 months with the lockdown. So we get a lot of those. We're also getting a lot of COVID frauds, where it was initially, I think if you remember 12 months ago, we were all banned from going out, weren't we? And there was people getting text messages or emails saying, you've been spotted outside your house, you must pay £50 fine, and people were doing it. And obviously now it's all about vaccinations. So people are saying, okay, I know you're only 22 years old, but we can get you the vaccination quicker and faster, and you just got to pay a certain fee or something like that. COVID related frauds are obviously incredibly sort of common, right down to the fact of before these vaccinations, they were offering sort of super strength masks or, cures for COVID, and people who were desperate were falling for it. So any sort of fraud that is sort of seasonal is usually the way. All right. But yeah, I'd be wary of the COVID related ones right now. Have you got anything recent there, Les? Just 1 second.
Yeah, there is a particularly nasty type of fraud called push payment authorization. And this is where you're contacted either by your bank or we've seen it even where people have been buying a house and the solicitor's email has been intercepted. And they've had an email saying that your final payment is due. Please pay X £100,000 into our holding account and giving the account number. And you then move that money into an account. You push it into their account, basically. That's what's called push payment authorization. And that money gets lost. If you get anything like that, if you get anything from your bank saying that there's been some fraudulent activity, you need to move your money into a safe account. And this is a new account that we've set up for you. Please move your money into here where it'll be safe. Always investigate the fraud. Don't. Banks never operate unsafe accounts. Your money is safe where it is. If you get a call like that or a text or an email, contact your bank. Doing what we said earlier, wait 5 minutes, use a different phone, contact your bank and just say, was it you? And they will almost certainly say no. But yeah, push payment authorization is a particularly nasty fraud, and it does actually take quite a lot. The by far the biggest revenue earner for the fraudsters is pension and investment fraud. Pension investment fraud will typically take in 80, 90, hundreds of thousands of pounds from a single victim. And this starts very easily. You get a text or a phone call or an email saying that we've got this wonderful offer. The bank rate at the moment is about 1.1% or 0.5%, somewhere around there. We can offer you 6%. Would you like a trial investment with us? Can we send you a brochure? And they send you this glossy brochure. They direct you to this really nice looking website with lots of reviews on it, 5-star reviews and all the rest of it. You think, yeah, that looks interesting. Why shouldn't I try and make 6% when the bank rate's only what it is at the moment? And then they'll offer you a trial account. So you put in, say, I don't know, a few thousand maybe just as a trial. They will then send you either they will send you a reward from that. They will send you the interest on that, or they will say that your money's, yes, it's making really nice interest at the moment. Would you like to increase your investment? And they will keep on sucking money off you until eventually it's all gone. Once they realize that they can't get any more money off you, the website's closed down, the phone number is disconnected, and your money's lost. So do be careful of pension investment fraud and push payment authorization. Great.
Thanks, Les. That is shocked me quite a bit. I was going to say as well that I mentioned.
I think you need to unmute, Stella.
Can you hear me?
Oh, hang on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We can hear you, Stella. We can hear you.
Can hear me, okay. What I was going to say as well, I mean, like most people probably, I don't know, quite a lot of people do online banking. Would you advise, I tend to do this myself as well, banks are quite, what is it called? They're on top of things at the moment where they are sending messages, let's say, for example, this, be careful about this or that. And I do understand people are quite busy. I may not read these messages, but do you think it is a good idea, obviously, to be on top of what your bank is advising you as well?
Very much so. What I would say to you with regards to the banks, when you try and make a payment to one of your friends now, I think it comes up with a standard message. Are you sure you trust this person? Are you being pressured into doing this and making this decision, etc.? And the banks have started to do that primarily through a lot of pressure from law enforcement saying you're not doing enough for your customers. And one of the questions we were going to talk about is how your banks should protect you. So if I was going to send you some money, Stella, okay, you tricked me or something, I was going to buy some concert tickets off you or something. All right, and then I paid the money and you didn't send me the tickets. Obviously, that's just a normal, common online shopping type fraud, all right? But ultimately, whenever I set up a new payee, and the bank have just set up a confirmation of payee scheme. So if I spell your name wrong, they'll then question it and say you've spelled the name wrong. Whereas in the past, before 12 months ago, I could put, I want to send £40 to Donald Trump. I want to send £40 to Scooby-Doo. They never looked at the name. They didn't care. They just looked at the account details, which we were really angry about. And so they have changed that. But what I would also say, if you are a victim of fraud and your bank says, well, we did warn you, we did say, are you sure you want to send this money? Then don't always take that as, oh, the banks could have done more. If ultimately you're trying to send money to an account, the banks have plenty of software out there to say, that account's been red flagged, or this is an unusual transaction. For instance, if we talk about my example of Harold there, all of a sudden he's sending large amounts of money to strange accounts, people who might have a totally different sort of background to him. He's a white British male and he's trying to send money to an African sounding name or a Russian sounding name, an Eastern European sounding name. And he's never done this before. Just because the bank says, are you sure you want to do this, on a little brief message online, that's not enough. They should be ringing that customer and saying, why are you doing this? What do you know the details? What started this? What money? Why are you sending money to this person? And the banks are well within their rights, even though there's money in your account, to refuse to send it. Okay, it might mean the end of your relationship. You might lose your temper and say, well, I'm taking all my money out. But we're very, very much on the case of pushing the banks to do a bit more. And one of the examples I wanted to talk about, if anyone out there amongst the people who are listening is a victim of fraud and contacts the bank and says, oh, right, is there anything you can do? And they say, no, it's all your own fault. Don't stand for that. Make an official complaint saying, well, if you'd have challenged me and said, well, why have you paid £1,200 out the blue and rang me, I might have thought twice about it. But, or if I'd moved my money, like Les has just talked about in an authorised push payment scheme, just one little random message saying, are you sure you want to do this? That won't stop many people from doing something. So I would always, even if you have been, really daft, and you think, oh, I'm so embarrassed, still put a complaint into your bank. Your bank might think, okay, they've been a loyal customer, we'll reimburse them this time. Or they might just say no. They might have a standard sort of response to, no, it's your own fault, end of errand. However, that's when you then go to the financial ombudsman. And that's and a third party mediator, and the banks have all signed up to that. So if I'm having an argument with Barclays Bank and they're saying, no, Craig, you were daft, you were silly, it's your own fault, then I'd take that to the Ombudsman, and the banks sign up to it to agree to whatever they decide to do. So if they decide, hang on, your customer did have a point there, you could have protected him more by ringing him or something like that, and they will then say, you must return his money. And they've signed up to go, okay, they might begrudgingly do it, but they will do it. So it's always worth pursuing that complaint. And that is what a lot of the time is all we can do, because when you've sent your, if you're a victim of fraud, seller, when you send your money overseas, it becomes incredibly hard for law enforcement to get any of your money back, because it's not like the TV where I just ring somebody in Moscow or I ring somebody, you know, in Nigeria and get their police to go knocking on doors. It doesn't happen like that. Just like when they ring here, we've got enough crime ourselves without trying to help a victim of crime from Bulgaria. So always pursue your bank and say, I think you could have helped me more there. I was in a moment of, I'd been groomed, I'd been exploited, I'd been brainwashed, a bit like Harold had. You should have identified that, you know, my mindset wasn't right. You might not win, but I'll tell you what, we get a lot of complaints who actually end up getting a lot of their money back because the banks should do a little bit more. Okay.
Thank you. Absolutely agree with you there, Craig. Just an interesting two comments here that have been put on the chat. Someone is saying, today I got a call from someone who left a message saying BT was suspending my account. If I'm worried, please press 1. I did that. A man answered, said he was from BT, but there was a problem with my account. I had a funny feeling, so I let him carry on talking. He was asking me what phone I had. I put down the phone. I'm glad I did now. Thanks for this talk. Very helpful. And someone else has said as well, some of us are relatively new in this country, and therefore all this advice is highly appreciated. If any of the listeners have any queries, is there anywhere you can direct them to
Sure.
have a look?
Sure. Leslie's going to pull up a screen now. There's a really good site, and there's loads of them out there. But even on there's a site called Action Fraud. Okay, and if we'll put the details up in a second. But ultimately, on there, it's like a catch-all site. It's an umbrella site. It tells you all about different types of frauds, and it offers you all sorts of advice on places to go. So that is a really useful one. But just for your caller there who did that and got a phone call saying, please press 1, etc. There's various things that can happen. Sometimes by pressing 1, you're actually pressing 1 and you're actually being connected to a premium phone line, which is costing you £2 or £3 a minute. So, you know, they can catch us out with that and just might make £12, £15 out of each customer, which is annoying if you suddenly get that on your phone bill. But a lot of the time it's to see if your phone's live. This is why companies get fined extraordinary amounts of money when they lose all their customers' details, because those customers' details are then used for us to get those cold calls. You know, I'm probably as safe as I would hope anyone would be, and I get plenty of them. I got one on the weekend, the National Insurance hotline saying, you owe some money, please press 1. Do you know what? I had that instance where that devil on me, I thought, I'm going to press 1, I'm going to see what happens. So I pressed 1 and I get through. It sounded like an Indian person, and they said, yeah, National Insurance, how can I help you? And I said, well, you rang me, so how can I help you? And they put the phone down, which you're thinking, well, that's not really good fraudmanship, is it? However, 30 seconds later, I got a phone call from somebody from Amazon saying there's a parcel waiting for you, but you've got to pay the excess package. So what they've actually done is they'd proven my line was actually live. By me answering it and pressing 1, that gets a tick against it. So now I will probably get more pain in the backside calls, and just for me being curious. So that's sometimes what they do. There's all sorts of tactics. Like you said, a lot of the time, it's just a case of filling in your details, and then they start asking for more and more personal details. And they might not actually do anything with that other than Stella. They might then sell on those details to another organised crime group who then ring me pretending to be from my bank. Like I think like the guys have talked about. So a lot of the time, it's almost like a step process. Just because you're tricked by that first one, you think, well, nothing happened, I'm not bothered. But now the next gang, I mean, have got a lot more of your information, and then they might ring you. They might know your mother's maiden name. They might know the last 4 digits on your card, etc., etc. And if somebody rings you knowing a lot about you, they're a lot more plausible, aren't they? You tend to think maybe they are from the bank or from the hospital or whoever. Okay.
Yeah, I must admit, I've noticed as well when I've picked up a call straight after I've had about 2 or 3, other, scam callers, and I'm thinking, well, are these connected or what? So you're absolutely right, Craig.
Always think the worst. Think the worst, I'm afraid.
Dare I ask one question here? Do these fraudsters end up actually being prosecuted at all?
Not enough, I have to be honest, Stella. Fraud investigations are usually incredibly sort of convoluted. They take months, if not years. I have to hold my hands up and say we tend to concentrate greatly more on education, prevention and disruption, rather than, and we haven't got enough officers, I'm afraid. Demand far exceeds our supply of officers, because a fraud, if I'm dealing with a questionable website advertising an investment, a gold mine, let's go for a gold mine in South Africa, and we've got 4 victims in Greater Manchester, but you can guarantee, like I said with the website, we could have 20 victims in Liverpool, we could have 40 victims in London, you could have another 60 victims in other parts of Yorkshire. We had a recent, well, it was not that recent now, obviously, with COVID, but I think 18 months ago, I dealt with a cheap flight fraud where, you wanted to go to New York and it cost £600. All of a sudden, this organisation was charging 250. So everyone was pouncing on that. And we had 700 victims, Stella, 700.
Wow.
who had all paid money to different bank accounts. So that's 700 different bank accounts. And ultimately, you've got to get a court order for each of those bank accounts. You've got to find out where the money goes after you send it to them. And as you can see, it takes a long time, because everything's not at the touch of a button. We have to go to court and get a judge to sign off to say we want to know all the details on those accounts. So fraudsters don't just target me on my own. They'll target me. They'll send the same text message or the same email to 500 of us. And if they only get a 5% take up, they're off and running, aren't they? So the fraud investigations take so long. Right. Yes, I have to hold my hands up. We don't get enough sent to jail. And also the fraud punishments aren't strong enough. If you were to go into a bank with a fake gun and get no money, okay, you would get 10 years for armed robbery. Okay.
Yeah.
If you commit a fraud and steal, we had a guy recently stole £6 million on mortgage frauds, and he got 4 years. He'd stolen £6 million, Stella, and he got 4 years.
Fair.
And of course, he was out in 2 years. He was out. So if you're a bright enough criminal, I know what crime I'd be committing. So that's not to give anyone any ideas out there. So,
Right. Thanks so much, Craig. I'm conscious of the time now. Gosh, it's gone really quick this evening. Right. Before we finish, I think someone has asked if we've got what is it called? On the phone, you can choose to block NR or report the call. Is that good to do?
You want to go for that, Les?
Yeah, sure. This is the call blocker scheme that most telephone companies will have it available to you free of charge. Some will have a kind of enhanced version that you can pay for. But I'm with BT and I use BT Call Protect. Really easy to use. You set it up on the BT home page on the website. Just tell them that you want to sign up for Call Protect. When you get a call, you still answer it. You answer the call. You then dial, when the call's finished, you dial 1572 and you get a recorded message saying, do you want to add this to your list of blocked calls? And basically any calls from that number again then will go into a kind of voicemail, a trash voicemail. And if they wanted to, they could leave a message there, but nobody ever does. I checked mine this morning and there are no messages in. But yeah, I use BT Call Protect. I know that Sky, I know that Virgin and some of the other telephone and internet providers have them as well. but they are really easy to use, and most companies have them free of charge.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Pete. Right, we're finished now. I'd like to thank you so much, Craig, Les, and Pete. It's been a very insightful evening, and I'm sure personally for myself, I've gained a lot. And
We'll come back anytime.
Please do. We would really appreciate it. I will now hand you back to Leroy, who's going to finish off this session as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to add my thanks to the Greater Manchester Police Economic Crime Unit, and I'm sure we've all gained a valuable insight into all the potential ways in which we can be scammed. So it behoves us all to be as careful as possible. We invite you all back next Monday at 7 p.m. To another Total Transformation seminar, where we'll be looking at truth and conspiracy. Who do we trust, mainstream media or social media? Okay, so that'll be a very interesting session for us to look at, and that will be led by Dr. Beatrice Castrati. So that's next Monday at 7 p.m. So thank you all once again for joining us this evening, and hopefully we'll see you next Monday again at 7 p.m. Good night.
Thank you. Good luck.
And thanks again, guys.
Bye, all. See
Good
you.
night. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, goodbye.